Former Public Protector Advocate Thuli Madonsela says she agrees with the way President Cyril Ramaphosa handled the allegations leveled against him relating to his Phala Phala robbery. Madonsela said Ramaphosa did right to alert his security detail first because she would have done the same. Madonsela says that she thinks the farmgate saga could be used as a deviation tool by those who do not want to be held accountable in the state capture report. Let's just take a listen at what she said before we speak to our guest.
I don't know whether the president needs to give us more than he has given. Firstly, he has already told us that there was money. Secondly, that it was from the proceeds of a sale. And then thirdly, then to say, given the fact that this is now the subject of criminal proceedings, the rest of the information will come through that process. Would this matter have gone away had we received more information? I doubt. It just seems to me that a lot of the narrative is controlled somewhere else, which is what worries me about the possibility that this being a legitimate concern might be a dead cat, because a dead cat doesn't mean that it's not a legitimate concern. It's just that a dead cat is thrown in at an opportune moment. Like every South African, I anticipate the final report with much hope that finally we'll get a sense of whether or not our democracy was hijacked. And I'm not too concerned about the money that was stolen, even though that's a huge source of concern. But what we should also be equally concerned about as South Africans is that if these allegations are true, then our democracy was stolen, our democracy was hijacked. Instead of us being governed by public representatives on the basis of our constitution and the documents they presented to us as their promise to us, we actually ended up being governed by a bunch of people for the purposes of hijacking our institutions for personal gain and to avoid criminal accountability.
To discuss which of the two matters should be taking priority, we're joined by Chair for Social Security Systems Administration and Management at the Wits School of Governance, Professor Alex van der Heever. Thank you very much for availing yourself this morning. Does it need to be either or issue taking precedence? Are they both not equally important?
I think that the former public protector raises an important consideration, and that is that the criminality of the Zuma administration that is being revealed in the Zondo report represents an existential threat to South Africa's democracy. So it wasn't just a matter of ordinary criminality. It was about the attempt to take over the state and remove all accountability when one steals from the state. And the consequences of that are still with us in many respects. And a large part of the ability to capture the state resides in the position of the president. And I think that we have to look very carefully, therefore, at the conduct of the president going forward. So this is not an either-or. We should not allow this attempt to sort of besmirch the president as a means to eliminate or stop the processes that should ultimately result in that criminality from being prosecuted and all people responsible going to jail and obviously permanently kept out of positions of the state. The issue of what the president has done does require a review going forward, but it should not in any way be used to either blackmail the position of the president or be used to interrupt the process of holding those to account that have been uncovered in the Zondo process. And everything needs to be done to basically address that particular concern. I do think we've got concerns going forward that many of the structures in the South African state that allowed for its capture still exist. The structural weaknesses continue to exist under the Ramaphosa government, and those need to be closed, and they haven't been. And I think that that's where we have to now look at the future conduct of government going forward. So I think that it is absolutely necessary to prosecute the people responsible for the state capture uncovered in the Zondo report.
To your last point, I don't think there's any argument against that, but are we not conflating issues here? We do have a president who has admitted that there was a crime that was committed on his property that was not declared. An investigation, yes, is underway. How is it being used to blackmail him, as you point out? You're saying that, with the state capture and those who are involved, this should not be used to blackmail the president currently. How is this being used to blackmail him?
Well, it can be. So this is a cause for concern, because quite clearly what has been done in the past is that when people talk about political ways of resolving corruption in the past, it meant that an agreement has been made within the ANC structures not to prosecute individuals. And maybe they would just resign and disappear into the ether. But the issue here is that still a substantial degree of discretion lies within the position of the president. He might not be able to control events to the extent that the control was created under the state capture, not in the short term. But it is possible to sort of try and use this against him as a way of getting him to withdraw, try to influence the state to withdraw charges or to soften this response to the people responsible for the state capture. So I think that this is an area of concern, and it does indicate that we have potentially a compromised president, and we should be very, very wary about that. We can't allow that to become a basis for any kind of withdrawal of charges and processes against the previous administration.
You speak of large parts of capturing the state residing within the president, or those powers residing within the president. Is it not concerning that large sums of money, cash, were found on his property, allegedly, right? So that money was allegedly found on his property, US dollars at that, which would suggest that it would be in contravention of the law. And some sectors of society widely arguing that, well, this could also mean that, you have something at your disposal where you could potentially or allegedly influence the judiciary to act in a certain type of way. When you speak of us being wary, though, is there something to be said about that argument that is widely held in some sectors of society?
Yeah, so let's look at, so yes, there is a concern, and it is a very definite concern. But there is an agenda from the people who are currently raising those issues. They are people who are even more compromised than the president is, and are attempting to regain control of the state as a way of protecting themselves. That would be the argument that is currently being made. The position that we as South Africans are being put in is that it is in many respects untenable. We have a government structure that it appears to be lawless. And I think that we have to have a return to being a law-abiding government. Now, to the extent that the president is compromised, that process hasn't completed, and it does need to complete. It should not be allowed to hijack the Zondo process and the subsequent prosecutions, but that also shouldn't be, we should also be holding the president to account in due course. But it should also not be a process that allows the previous crowd to then re-enter the position of the presidency, which is clearly what they're seeking to do, because that's the best way of protecting themselves from prosecution. So we can't allow that to happen. So to the extent that the president, if we move to a particular point in time where this really becomes completely untenable, I'm afraid we will need immediate elections in South Africa to resolve this, because the mandate upon which the current government was elected into power was to eliminate this corruption systematically. And if we've got a compromised presidency and we've got a compromised ruling party, then we've got to basically now put it to the electorate and let them replace the government if necessary. The unfortunate consequence of that is that the new Electoral Act isn't yet in place, and that has been stalled in Parliament, probably improperly, in order to slow the possibility of a more democratic electoral system being implemented by the time of the next election. That would be the accusation that is being made. So I think that it would be unfortunate if we don't have the new Electoral Act in place, but we probably would need, if we get to the point where we can't trust the president and we can't trust the governing party, then we have to have an election, because their mandate is now compromised. The social contract in South Africa has been broken, and we basically need to go back to the people.
Prof, is it clear to you who these people are? We do have a possible motive as to why, you know, when you put forth the argument that this could be used to blackmail the president. Is it clear to you who then could be doing this? I ask this because the president himself has said, it was in Parliament when he said this during that debate where there was commotion, where the EFF didn't want to take his audience, that there are people who could be using this to, you know, sort of deflect, you know, but take away from the issue, more pointedly, to take away from the issue of state capture. We do know that the Director General in the presidency, she received a threat in the form of a bullet and a letter. So does it appear clear to you, though, that who these people are?
I think that it appears, I think, generally understood that this will be largely the people who are implicated in the Zondo report and who will be implicated in the final version of the Zondo report coming out. So we're seeing those are the people who are laying charges, those are the people who are coming forward publicly to ask for the head of the president. And they're using this as a means to create disarray, particularly as there is a lead up to the ANC elections in December, and that is also part of a stratagem. The concern that I'd raise is that we're really looking for people who want to change the power position within the ANC, rather than to resolve the real issues of criminality within the state. These are not people who are interested in resolving the issues of criminality within the state. They want to continue with impunity potentially. And that is why there is an attack on the Zondo process. So I think that there is definitely a concern. These accusations come from there, and there are leaks associated with that. Now, I think that it's absolutely appropriate for South Africa to hold everybody, including the president, to account. But we've got to do it in such a way that we do not lose our state. It cannot be used as a means to put the previous crowd back in control. We cannot get to that position. So we've got to protect the processes of democracy in South Africa, which is absolutely critical. And I think that we, as a society, we will have to hold government, the president, and all the people implicated in the Zondo Commission report, and all the people not implicated in the Zondo Commission report who also need to go to jail, they all need to be held to account going forward. And we can only do that if we have a clean democracy in South Africa, if we've got governments that come into positions of power who can be held to account when they do things that are illegal. And right now we can't be sure of that.
Prof, just finally for us, I do wonder why now in terms of the timing of this. We've had 4 volumes already released. This is the 5th and the final one.
Well, clearly it's related to the Zondo report and its findings. So it's quite clear that there is a little battle going on within the ANC over control of the state. And I think that is something that we have to look very carefully at. What we want in future in South Africa is that the machinery of the state has to hold everybody to account, including the people who are running government. It cannot be for a faction to use the processes of accountability in order to improve their position within government. It must be that there is an impartial process that holds everybody to account, and that is ultimately what we want out of a democratic state. I'm not sure that we've been given that at this point, but it is South Africa's right to basically make sure and responsibility to make sure that its government isn't going to just use the state for an effectively an unelected elite.
Chair for Social Security Systems Administration and Management at the Wits School of Governance, Professor Alex van der Heever, thank you very much for your time.